I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Really happy to be back alive and well on this September 11th, 2017. It's crazy. It seems like we have, it seems like our radio show always falls on a 9/11. So it must be some kind of conspiracy, right? The universe is working against George Bush by putting our radio show on September 11th every year. Just kidding. Anyway, very, I don't want to say special because that would be way too Trump-like. Very heavy day. 9/11 is a very heavy day. There's no doubt that thousands of Americans and people from all over the world were killed on this date, on 2001 in New York City, when the buildings were hit by, the Twin Towers at least were hit by a couple of planes. And, of course, a third building fell down that wasn't hit by a plane. I guess we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But regardless of all that stuff, people died. Thousands of Americans. Really, really messed up, what happened there. Also, the millions of people who have now died who had nothing to do with that. And I'm not talking about Americans. I'm talking about people who have now become victims of U.S. foreign policy around the world who weren't part of Al-Qaeda, weren't part of the people who were assigned blame for 9/11. Millions of people. We don't know how many people, really. At least 1 million people in Iraq are dead now because of our actions, not ours, but the United States' actions following 9/11 in retaliation. And I mean, by all means, if Osama bin Laden takes blame for the attack, then we go after Osama bin Laden. We kill him. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is to go to Afghanistan and say, hey, Taliban, we're going to overthrow your country now. Hey, Saddam Hussein and Iraq, we're going to overthrow your country now. Hey, Gaddafi in Libya, we're going to overthrow your country. And Syria, we're going to overthrow your country. And all these other places, it's like, oh, yeah, the excuse is the same. None of that stuff made any sense. And unfortunately, that is actually how the terrorists won. And, if we're to believe that, bin Laden was truly behind this and that it was an Al-Qaeda plot and all that, well, guess what? They won. Bin Laden may be dead now, but they won. Look what they've done to the United States. look at the state of this country. It's pretty sad at this point. It is. It's broke. It's in debt. You know, we just crossed that 20 trillion mark today. $20 trillion U.S. debt. A lot of it has to do with the war on terror. If we're to believe that story, they won. They beat us because of our overreaction. It would have been one thing to say, okay, we're going to have a, you know, we're just going to go after bin Laden and, you know, that's it. It's a whole other thing to start a worldwide war against terror, against a tactic. Terrorism isn't even an ideology. You can't declare war on terrorism. It's not an ideology even. It's not even an idea. It's a tactic. It's a way of doing. Anyone could be a terrorist. You could be an Irish terrorist. You can be an American terrorist. You could be a Mexican terrorist. You can be an Iraqi or a Afghani terrorist or a Saudi terrorist, which happen to be the majority of the people who supposedly attacked us on 9/11. Supposedly, those guys were Saudi Arabians. So why did we go after Iraq and not Saudi Arabia? Well, that's just another one of those questions that, you know, all we can do is speculate about. But that being said, we're going to get this show on the road because we've got a lot of ground to cover on this day. And let me just introduce our awesome journalist that we have on the line, Jake Anderson, joining us once again for the Anti-Media Radio. What's up, Jake?
Hey, man. How's it going? Yeah, it's a strange day. I think people are still figuring out how to react. I was at a bar earlier, and this man said to the bartender, "Happy 9/11," and the room kind of went cold, and he was like, "Oh, well, you know, I guess that's probably not the right thing to say." And then I was watching the beginning of the Monday Night Football a few minutes ago, and how it's so calibrated to you know tap into the emotional resonance of what has become you know, essentially a holiday. And in America, our holidays are consumer events as well. Patriotic, nationalistic events. So I think it is important, regardless of what your opinion of what happened on 9/11 is, no matter what your conspiracy theory is, to understand that the day represents death, and it represents the start of a war on terror that has claimed millions of lives. And, you know, it should be a day that we respect, you know, the living and the dead. And I think all too often, especially for activists, people get tied up on this day trying to use this as a platform to prove something. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Most people are baked into their positions, and they're not going to change their minds. And what's important is for us to try and figure out a way to not let something like that happen again, but more importantly, to not let what happened afterwards happen again, which is, you know, not allowing a single terror attack to dictate 15 years of war that's cost trillions of dollars and millions of lives, and has endangered all of us in many, many ways. So I think that's the important thing to take from today is perspective.
Exactly. And it's not only 15 years, you know, going on 16. But, you know, Trump just rededicated a 50% increase to troops to Afghanistan again. And last time I checked, you know, when I don't know if you remember this, Jake, but I remember I was in high school at the time when 9/11 happened. I was a freshman in high school. And, you know, I remember that. I remember using it as an excuse to stay home from school. I pretend like I was like, oh, I'm scared. I don't want to go to school. And, you know, my mom was like, all right, that's fine. You don't have to go to school today. I was like, yes. You know, I was like, yes. But anyway, it's been 16, 17 years. And now Trump is saying, yeah, we're going to go ahead and just continue this thing. Even though when he was a candidate for president, he sounded much more dovish anyway than Hillary Clinton. And I know that's why many of my friends who claimed to have been libertarians wound up voting for him. I know that I was horribly mistaken in the people who I thought were my friends, thinking that they were actual libertarians when they weren't. But I guess a lot of people think they're one way politically, and then when push comes to shove, they show their true colors. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. A lot of people voted for Trump because they thought he was going to put an end to this illogical, just worldwide war on terror, nation building, policing the world type of thing. Trump was very much a not policing the world type of candidate, very much like Obama was, and very much like George W. Bush, ironically, was when he was running in 2000, because Bill Clinton was seen as too hawkish. All of these candidates run on peace, but they rule by war. If you look on Saturday, we published a great, really, really good op-ed. Why presidents campaign on peace and rule on war. If you haven't read that, go back and look on Saturday. If you're looking for some not academic, that's not the right word. Reading this is like reading a book. It's not that long, but it's very scholarly. It's very, very nice to read.
Who wrote it?
Joey did. Joey wrote it. So it's a really good one. Joey Clark, one of our new op-ed writers. He contributes an article here and there a few times a month. But these are very in-depth, kind of opinion-y articles, philosophical stuff. Really good stuff to read. Anyway, not your typical news story. But Trump got elected on stopping all this crap, and now he's rededicating to Afghanistan, which is a huge, huge mistake. Last time I checked, the Taliban was back up to about 60,000 strength. And we've been over there fighting a war against the Taliban, basically, supposedly anyway, for 15, 16 years at this point. And honestly, what have we accomplished in Afghanistan? I mean, nothing. And the point I was trying to bring up before I got sidetracked, Jake, was, do you remember when they were selling this thing to us? Because, everybody knows bin Laden was to blame for 9/11, and it was Al-Qaeda. But then they had to sell us this war of, okay, well, we're going to have to, if we're going to get bin Laden, we have to go overthrow Afghanistan because the Taliban treat women badly, and the Taliban aren't fair to people, and the Taliban, do bad things, and they're intolerant, and they're not nice to gay people, and they're basically there was the whole war in Afghanistan thing was sold as a humanitarian war, where we were going to go save Afghanistan from these bad Taliban guys who treat women like shit. And the whole fact of the matter that the Taliban wasn't behind 9/11, that really wasn't newsworthy at the time. It was like, okay, well, that's just kind of a side note. The main thing that we want to highlight here, if you go back and look at the news stories, it's, the Taliban are womanizers, and they make women cover up, and they just, you name it, like every trick in the book, they used it to tell everybody in America, the Taliban are subhuman oppressors, and we're not actually going to go fight against Afghanistan. We're going to liberate them from these bad guys.
Yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday. I was a freshman in college when it happened, and I remember thinking immediately like, wow, we're about to be at war for a long time, and sure enough, we were.
Yeah, and the next thing you know, we're in Afghanistan, and we're fighting against the Taliban, and those are the same guys who we kind of helped, foster those groups when they were trying to get rid of the Soviets who were occupying, Afghanistan for a while, and it worked. We fostered them, we armed them with pretty basic, weaponry, and they had the advantage of the home field advantage, and they had the home turf, and they had really rugged terrain that they grew up living in, and their families had lived there forever. They know how to navigate the terrain. They had tunnels, and it turns out these guys were easily able to get the Soviets out or at least get them to expend a bunch of resources and thousands of lives for basically nothing. And the U.S. just sent a little training, some weapons, basic weapons like rifles and stuff. And that's, partially, you can partially attribute the fall of the Soviet Union to that, to what they did, the quagmire they got into in Afghanistan. And then a couple decades later, several decades later, the U.S. comes on, well, let's try to do what the Soviets couldn't do over there, and let's go occupy the place and go at war over there forever, I guess. This has become America's longest war, and it's showing no sign of ending. Looks like it's going to just keep going and going and going.
Well, and not to mention the fact that if you look at the tallies of life from it, it's now it now rivals Vietnam. The only difference being the majority of lives are on the other side, and so less people care. But I did a pretty rudimentary math session of figuring out how many lives were lost during Vietnam, how many lives we're at now with the war on terror combined. And obviously this is a very approximate number, but it's about at 1.6 million in the war on terror, which is the vast percentage of which is Middle Eastern lives, Arab lives, the vast majority of which are civilian, and that's rivals the low end estimates of the Vietnam War. And it's now longer than the Vietnam War, too. So you have to think, when we think of the Vietnam War, we think of this great, my dad calls it, my dad who fought he was in the Vietnam War, calls it a giant void in the center of America. And when we think of Vietnam, we think of this just giant calamitous error in history that changed our country. But do people think of the war on terror in the same way? Not so much, because we're still in it, and we're still being shaped by it, and they're still using it to shape their foreign policy and to make money off of it and to do the things they want to do. So it's like Vietnam never ended, and it's just utterly mind-blowing.
And yeah, dude, what was I watching the other day? I started watching this new show about it's with James Franco, and he goes back in time, and he's supposed to prevent the assassination of JFK. I don't know if you've seen this yet.
The Butterfly Effect?
No, it's a new show on Hulu exclusively.
Oh.
It's pretty good. It's with James Franco. It's by Stephen King, and
11/26 something.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
So I just started watching that, and one of the guys was talking about how what if we could have prevented, going back in time, prevent Vietnam from happening? How many people would still be alive? And you bring up Vietnam, and it's just like, wow, Vietnam was really, really bad, but at least back then people actually had opposition to it. Now we're literally in the middle of a similar catastrophe, except just guys on the other side are dying, and maybe we're not dying, but our entire economic system is dying because of it. Okay, but you can't see that it's not as plain as day as yet. But as many people are dying on the other side, and people are out there marching with vagina hats on. Back during Vietnam, there was opposition to it. Those times were more noble. There was more focus. The people there actually had some kind of moral imperative. Now, what the shit are we doing? What are we doing? What are we protesting against? What are we stopping? What are we accomplishing right now? And I'll tell you what it is. Nothing. Nothing. Unfortunately, the United States, the people here, have become so misdirected, I guess you could say, where they don't march against these massive calamities unfolding right now. I mean, Donald Trump saying he's going to put more troops into Afghanistan, that should have been the big protest. That should have been our chance to put 1 million people out on the streets. Instead, these dudes go showing up in Berkeley or wherever the hotspot's at, Charlottesville or wherever, and they're beating each other up. Instead, the people that should be stopping these calamities are beating each other up instead. Like, this is the most frustrating point, and I always open the show with, the we're living in the craziest, most corrupt, yet interesting times. But we're also dealing with some of the most frustrating times because people are so misdirected right now. And I think America, I don't know, the country as a whole is trying to find itself, I guess. It's trying to do some soul searching, I guess you could say. I hate to use that cliche crap, but that's what I see going on. At the same time, this Vietnam War, quagmire type of scenario, it's unfolding right now, but worse. It's unfolding right now, but worse. And not only that, but it's like, oh, well, as if Afghanistan isn't bad enough, let's try to start some shit with Iran and North Korea at the same time as well. Like, let's add that into the mix. And where the hell is everybody at? Trying to say, marching a million people in the street saying, this, we cannot stand for this. Like, we can't allow this to happen. And I hate to, make fun of the whole women's march thing. The Hillary Clinton march or whatever. People walking around with vagina hats on and shit. Up until this year, I never found it necessary to criticize protests because I'm like, you know what? People are protesting, good for them. At least they're out there doing something. But at this point, and this includes a lot of the media and stuff, all the fake criticism going on of Trump, it's now become so hollow. At least with Obama, there was genuine there was genuine opposition from the left with Obama on foreign policy and stuff. 2013, no war with Syria movement, all that stuff. There was some genuine opposition with depth to it from the left. And now with Trump in office, it's just been people have become anti-Trump instead of anti-establishment or anti-war or pro-peace or trying to do something good for the world. It's like we just got to stop Trump, and make fun of Trump and criticize Trump and scrutinize his Twitter account. But at the same time, the damn empire goes on. And so let's go back. I wanna refocus this thing back in on 9/11. Enough of the ranting. So Derek Bros, who we had on the show last week or the week before, down in Houston dealing with all that, flooding and all that. He came on to talk about the flooding, but he also made a great post today about the whole 9/11 truth movement. And it's funny because we actually talked about this on our last show. Is about how everything, people who try to make everything into a conspiracy or try to make these crazy connections that really aren't there, they actually do more damage than good to the people actually seeking out the truth of the matter. Because when you turn everything into this crazy depopulation agenda conspiracy where everything is connected and blah 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 blah, well, you actually discredit the people genuinely seeking concrete information and documentation and leaks and verifiable proof that these conspiracies are actually happening, because many of the conspiracies genuinely are happening, and it'd be nice to expose them. But with so much gray matter going in and being thrown in the mix and confusing everybody and making everything sound extremely crazy, it kind of damages the whole movement. Because here's the thing: 9/11. The conspiracy it's a pretty damn big thing. It's a big conspiracy. It would have involved many people. And sooner or later, the information will come out and we'll get to find out more of the truth about this conspiracy, right? But at the same time, people going around saying, well, it was the Mossad and, George Bush did it. Like, I joke around and say, yeah, Bush did 9/11 just as like a joke. I think Bush probably was not aware of 9/11.
Yeah, I think so too.
You don't, when the conspiracy is that strong, you don't let people like that know about it. But there's a lot of proof that we don't know the truth. Like let me just lay it out like this. The official story of 9/11 is bullshit. We know that because all of the documents that have come out after the fact point towards Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is not the victim of U.S. foreign policy. They're the benefactor of it. And the victim of U.S. foreign policy is basically Iran and any of its proxies, which would include Iraq and Syria and stuff like that. So the Saudis were more or less behind it, according to the evidence and documentation that we have released via the 28 pages, via leaks, via lawsuits, things that are still unfolding to this day. We know that the Saudis were more or less behind it. Yet, the war went in a different direction. We went to Afghanistan, we went to Iraq. So in that way, I guess you can say it was a false flag. But the evidence is not there for you to sit here and say, well, 9/11 was an inside job. Well, it's nice to have that theory, fine, but there's no evidence for it, and so it's simply an opinion. And so people need to, it's doing a disservice to the truth seekers to present opinion as fact. And the fact of the matter is, we don't know what happened on 9/11. We don't. The evidence that comes out points more and more towards Saudi Arabia being the conspirator. That we know. But we don't know the fine details yet. Maybe someday soon a whistleblower will come forward, a lawsuit will declassify documents, FOIA requests will shed some light on something. But we should be careful about making too many connections that aren't there, because then it makes anybody trying to seek out the truth look like a ridiculous Alex Jones type of figure. And that's exactly what Alex Jones is doing. I mean, Alex Jones is harming the truth movement. Anybody seeking the truth, Alex Jones is getting in your way because he's so damn loony about it that it's like anyone saying anything similar to Alex Jones is completely written off. It's like, oh, you sound like Alex Jones, dude. You're crazy. You got to get off the crack pipe.
It's the truthers who cried wolf.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it, dude. And I consider myself a 9/11 truther because we don't, like I said, we all know now that the official story is bullshit. Somehow Saddam Hussein was assigned blame for it, or we went to war in Iraq for it, even though he had nothing to do with it. The whole weapons of mass destruction talk was bullshit. The whole, we're gonna liberate Afghanistan from the Taliban, that turned out to be bullshit. So the official story is bullshit, right? But the connections are not there to make these other, strong claims that this and that Bush did it, or that the Mossad did it, or that it was an inside job. I mean, that's a cool opinion and all, but the evidence doesn't stand up. And the people people that are working for the truth are getting dragged through the mud of these crazy, insane Alex Jones. Everything's a conspiracy type of thing.
What drives me crazy, man, is how easily the government could, help this whole thing by, there's footage of supposedly the planes hitting the Pentagon. There was video captured from surrounding buildings, and they will not release a single frame of it. And I think I saw it. I think maybe it was Anti-Media, maybe it was someone else saying at this point, after 16 years or whatever, there's clearly no national security harm that could possibly come out by releasing a still frame of a plane about to hit the Pentagon. The fact that they won't release that, it's the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So I agree with you that, people are getting in the way of themselves. But there's enough reasonable doubt at this point and circumstantial evidence to, like you said, suggest that not only is the official narrative bullshit, but there seems to be a much larger cover-up going on. And it just blows my mind that they will not release the footage of the Pentagon. And it's one of the most glaring holes, no pun intended, up there with the WTC-7 of the entire conspiracy.
Exactly.
It does not look like a plane hit the Pentagon. And if you want us to believe that a plane did hit the Pentagon, why don't you show us the footage that supposedly exists of it?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm with you. I'm with you that the conspiracy has gotten out of hand at this point in terms of being presented as truth, when instead it needs to be presented as a challenge to the narrative. Similarly to the JFK conspiracy.
Yeah.
We don't know. We still don't have an answer there either. We're living in a much more information age now than we were with Kennedy. I don't know if it'll help us or hurt us. I think Derek Brose was posting today that at this point there's so many different pieces of narrative. There's so much misinformation and disinformation out there that it's almost impossible to imagine it ever being resolved, because it's like no matter what anyone says, there's always going to be this doubt now. And it's unfortunate because it also polarizes the hell out of us, polarizes the hell out of the activist community, and just polarizes everyone. You can't even talk to a New Yorker about 9/11 being an inside job. They'll flip out on you. I had a publisher who was supposed to publish some science fiction of mine, and she just straight up flipped out on me for even merely suggesting it. It's such a deeply emotional thing now, and that's how these government people, they have studied psychology. They know psychology very well, and they know exactly what it takes to neutralize us and break us. They know how to break people in torture situations, and they know how to break populations now by playing with their emotions. And it's a complex situation, man.
Yeah. So, I don't want to really get into any of the specifics of like 9/11 conspiracy theories. Just like you said, man, there's a million of them. Everybody's got a different theory on it. I mean, shit. People are saying they used nuclear tactical nukes on the tower. I mean, people say some,
nanothermite.
There's a million theories out there. But I think the bigger topic here, I think that we should be focusing on is, and you brought this up a little bit ago too, is not really how the conspiracy played out, but how the reaction was to it. So just a little bit of background here. The Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was kind of already mostly written. I know Joe Biden had done some of the work on the Patriot Act, and it was just kind of waiting for the right moment for it to slip through. And 9/11 provided the perfect pretext to to make the Patriot Act happen. These guys were itching for a chance to go after Saddam Hussein. 9/11 gave the perfect pretext to go ahead and go into Iraq. I mean, the whole thing with Iraq turned out to be complete bullshit. They lied to us. They sat there and all those dudes in the government, the Bush administration, they all lied to us and they bullshitted us, and the media kind of ate it up like it was cake. It was like that chocolate cake that Trump was eating when he started bombing the Syrian. They ate that shit up like, that shit was good, presidential cake. And the media, dude, these guys, I don't know if it's where they get their money. I don't know if it's their shareholders. I don't know. Maybe it's just good ratings, but these guys fucking love war, dude. Like, they love it. Like, remember when Trump finally bombed the Syrian government? They were just like, Trump is finally presidential, and CNN was like jocking his nuts, and everybody was like, yeah, Trump, he's finally a president.
Yep. Fareed Zakaria even said he was a fucking despises Trump on that day when he dropped what was that bomb called? The Big Mother or something? I don't know. But Fareed was like, Trump's officially our president now. Yeah, it was just repulsive.
Yeah, and so, after 9/11, the media was just like, yeah, dude, let's just, whoever we can lay blame on, let's get them. Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm surprised Iran didn't fall. I'm surprised that wasn't included in there. And so these guys, they love the media people, man. They love their wars. Like I said, I don't know exactly. I don't know if they actually believe this crap. I really doubt that they believe this crap, because I tend to believe that most journalists are at least somewhat, seeking the truth out. I don't think people get into journalism like, yeah, I'm gonna get in so I could sell out and fucking, cause wars and whatever. Yeah. I think people get into journalism because they genuinely thinking like, yeah, some naive college kids like, I'm gonna go and I'm going to bring transparency to the government, and I'm going to do all these great things. And then they get in there and they work for CNN. They're like, oh, okay. So I got to write that, Iraq was part of 9/11, even though they weren't.
Like, okay. I actually work for the State Department. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I work for the Pentagon. Those are my real boss. So, the way I see it, what I figure is that the military-industrial complex being, I guess, one of our biggest industries, I'm guessing that they kind of own most of the media via shell companies, or, maybe they outright they own them, because, most of these companies are publicly traded corporations who have shareholders, and the shareholders can be anybody, including military contractors. Halliburton could own, this probably isn't true, but let's just say, Halliburton could own 10% of CBS if they wanted to. And I figure that's probably what's going on. If you can control the media establishment and you own a bunch of business interests, well, you could use the media to promote your businesses. And that's kind of like right now what's going on with Washington Post and the CIA and Amazon. How Amazon gets all kinds of kitty glove treatment from the media and stuff. It's because they own, Amazon also owns, or the owner of Amazon also owns Washington Post. So they give them all kinds of nice treatment, and they don't do critical coverage. I mean, it's been like several years since there's been a critical mainstream news story about Amazon, because of who owns it, And so if the media is constantly jockeying war, well, that tells you that there's probably, the people who make money off of wars are probably the guys that also own the media. And a lot of these media companies aren't even profitable. New York Times and CNN and these guys, they hardly make any money. Why does Jeff Bezos, maybe one of the most savvy businessmen on the planet, why does a guy like that buy the Washington Post? Does he do it to make profit? No. He does it to get influence, to change people's minds, to make people think certain ways. And that's the problem. Not a problem, but that's one of the hurdles that we have to overcome here at the Anti-Media, because we are not selling our influence. We're not saying, oh yeah, we'll push opinions on our readers based on whoever the hell gives us the most money. That's not what we do, unlike CNN, who literally posts propaganda for Saudi Arabia and shit like that because they give them all kinds of money. That's what these guys do. They disguise their news as either corporate or state propaganda because they get paid for it. And so these companies aren't as profitable as they are influential. CNN may not make very much money, but they spread a lot of influence. Washington Post may not make a lot of money, but if I'm the owner of Amazon and I own the Washington Post, well then shit, I could fucking, I could use the Washington Post to make Amazon $100 billion, even though if I lose a few $1 million on the Washington Post every year, that's fine because that's adding to my $100 billion that I'm making at Amazon. You know what I'm saying? And this is the kind of stuff that goes on. And so anyway, the whole point I wanted to get to here was that it's less important how the conspiracy happened. What's more important is what's happening after the conspiracy, or after the event. So 9/11 happened. It has all the symptoms of a propaganda event. And what's going on is that we're still, to this day, it's been over 15 years, to this day, the event of 9/11 is still being used to give these war profiteers carte blanche to do what they want, to do whatever the hell they want. I mean, Trump literally has a blank check where he as long as he says he's fighting terrorism, he can go to any country in the world. Any country, like if England tomorrow, if England said, you know what, of course this is very far-fetched, it's not going to happen, but if England said, you know what, we're not allies with you guys anymore, we don't want to work with you guys anymore. Tomorrow the United States could say, you know what, there's a ISIS cell in London, we got to go take care of it, send the drones, start doing the airstrikes. Like, they could actually do that. The president has been given a blank check ever since Bush to do what he wants as long as he says he's fighting terrorism. And that anybody says anything, well, maybe we should rethink that. Well, what, do you hate America? Are you unpatriotic? Are you a terrorist yourself? I mean, what are you? What are your priorities? I mean, why are you here? Why don't you leave this country if you hate it so much? This is the big problem. This is the propaganda has been deeply seated inside of our brains. Like I said, I was a freshman in high school when I saw this shit happen. I was sitting in my living room watching this shit all day. And it was just like PTSD style reprogramming, just boom, 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 watching the planes hitting the buildings, the people jumping out of the buildings, and, the buildings collapsing. And it's just like, bin Laden did it, the Muslims did it. And look today. Look at what happened today. Not just today, but I mean, modern day America. Trump ran on an anti-Muslim platform. I know everyone's like, it's not a Muslim ban. It's not, it's not a... Shut the fuck up. Trump is an anti-Muslim president. Trump ran as an anti-Muslim president. And then the same media that gave us all of this Islamophobia is like all of this blaming Muslims, dehumanizing Muslims so that we can go do this war on terror. No one gives a shit that all these Muslim kids are dying because, the media had to dehumanize them first. All of a sudden, the New York Times, Washington Post is like, oh my God, I can't believe Trump is saying these anti-Muslim things. That's so wrong. And it's like, wait, you guys just got done for 15 years dehumanizing Muslims, 24 hours a fucking day. So shut the hell up. And so all that propaganda seeded in your brain, and a guy like Trump comes along, the biggest idiot, the biggest buffoon we've ever seen. He says a few bad things about Muslims, and all of a sudden, half the white people in this country are like, yeah, he's our guy. He doesn't like Muslims just like us. This is all part of the propaganda, dude. Like, this is all part of this 9/11 event. The propaganda that was built up all around it. It was so perfect. It was such, I hate it. It's so bad, but it was so good. Like, it was done so well. That, 15 years later, like you said, Jake, you mentioned this shit to somebody from New York, and they're going to go crazy on you.
Yeah.
That's a bigger problem. I mean, the propaganda, I think, is a bigger problem. This false sense of nationalism. And, there was those pictures, like, before and after 9/11, in New York, and there was all those American flags all over on, like, every street, hanging off of every house and stuff. And it's like, yeah, American exceptionalism. We're going to go nuke the Middle East and we're going to knock out all these damn Muslims and stuff. These kind of events in that way are so dangerous because that's how they get you to just do their bidding. And now, 15 years later, nobody's even questioning it. Barely anybody. I mean, yeah, sure, we question the foreign policy every day, but we're not as popular as some of these guys. We're not like the Huffington Post. We're not like BuzzFeed or the Drudge Report, because those guys focus in on petty like social issues and polarizing shit, when the real big issue of the empire, the war on terror, goes unaddressed every single day in this country.
And they gave a lot of these neoliberal establishments, they gave Obama a free pass for 8 years as he continued many, if not all, of Bush's foreign policy, draconian surveillance, Patriot Act stuff, and Obama, as the anti-media has covered many times, Obama expanded the surveillance state, these media establishments are interconnected, like you were referring to before. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or something between the surveillance state, the defense contractors, the media establishment. It's like this synergistic organism at this point that is safeguarding the host empire from critique, and it's the most dangerous thing in the world right now, that we have a media establishment that will not take on the deep state. And this is why, one of the reasons, in my opinion, that Trump was able to win is that he tapped into that anger against the media establishment. And it's still going on with the CNN is fake news stuff. And he basically, reappropriated that narrative, which we've been talking about for years, which is this corruption in the media. And he reappropriated that narrative. And that's one of the reasons he won, is because he harnessed that rage that many Americans feel against the lack of objective reporting. And, like you said, look, not every reporter is evil. Many of them get in it for the right reasons. The same way as many cops get into the police force for the right reasons. But groupthink changes people, and disaster capitalism changes people. And we're behind at this point. And we got to change the direction somehow.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Trump, we've been on this anti-media narrative since 2013. We've been going at this for like over 4 years now. And Trump hijacked the anti-media narrative.
Yeah.
Ironically, for the deep state.
It's Trump, the name of your site. Trump took it.
Trump is now part of the deep state, and he's hijacked the anti-media narrative to work for the deep state. So now when Trump does all these horrible things, he bombing Afghanistan, increasing the number of civilian casualties, dropping all these ordinances, the biggest traditional bomb ever, hyping up this war in North Korea. Anyone that criticizes him is written off as some kind of liberal leftist. And the media, if the media reports on anything about it, it's like it's fake news. Oh, it can't be happening. CNN's saying it. It's like, what in the world is going on? And so, these propagandists aren't stupid. I mean, they use our narratives against us, and they've hijacked the anti-media narrative for Trump and his deep state handler. Trump's a neocon, dude. Like he may say things. I mean, I don't even know what he says anymore. It's like almost. You can't even understand what he's saying because it's so disjointed. But Trump may say one thing, but what he's doing is neocon. He's doing neocon stuff, and he's doing conservative crap on social policy. The DACA thing, the latest thing he done with DACA, stupid, disastrous, suicidal policy. I mean, these DACA people, first of all, these are young people who didn't choose to come here. They did not, knowingly come here. They came here with their parents. They're paying into the system without getting any of the benefits out of it. I mean, to end DACA is suicide. It's a suicidal policy. So, Trump is trying to throw red meat to his conservative base. But while these social issues go on and eat up the airwaves and the talking points and the pundits' attention, the empire goes on too. This is, to this day, I think the U.S. empire has been the biggest issue since the 50s, since World War II, when the U.S. kind of stepped up and said, you know what, we're going to be the new dominant power. England's going to have to be number 2. They're going to be under us, and we're going to be in charge of shit now. And I think, who was it, Ike, that basically President Eisenhower, who gave that fair warning about the military-industrial complex, and maybe JFK tried to slow it down, and maybe that's why he was taken out or whatever. I don't know for sure. But it's been the biggest issue since the 50s. I mean, the Korean War was unnecessary, and nothing came of it. The Vietnam War, it turns out, on the topic of 9/11 and stuff, the Vietnam War was started with a false flag, the Gulf of Tonkin. It wasn't a real event. They made it up. They said that one of our ships was attacked by the North Vietnamese, and it wasn't. Didn't actually happen. And so the Vietnam War was predicated on a lie. I don't know if you want to call it the deep state, the military-industrial complex, or whatever. They have been doing all these things since the 50s, and it should be the biggest story ever since then. I mean, shit, it's been like almost 70 years now. Where this is the biggest story in this country, is dealing with this empire. But it's not the biggest story. It's not. I mean, these alt-right guys and the Antifa are out slugging each other out in the street. That's the big story right now. And so it's just the priorities have been mixed up. They're more concerned with deporting, young, hardworking kids who are in this country not of their own choosing. They want to deport them instead of dealing with this massive, huge elephant on the world. It's not even an elephant in the room. Like, the United States empire is now an elephant on the world. It's just, it blows my mind. And, back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show, it's a very frustrating time. We got the internet, we've got the connectedness, the communications, the technology, and people want to fight each other instead. So weird, so strange.
It's one of the reasons I'm excited about the Pursuance Project, the Barrett Brown thing, because he, states very clearly that he thinks that the promise of the internet has not been realized, and we need to be using this decentralized, powerful structure to connect people that can change the world instead of arguing about cat pictures,
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'm going to tie this into the hurricane thing. Cat pictures wouldn't be that big of a deal if we all weren't getting looted. Because we're getting looted, and then people are getting murdered with the loot. The government is stealing money from all of our productivity. Everybody that's working, giving up 20-30% of our paychecks to the government so that they can get the money and do who knows what with it. They're $20 trillion in debt. I don't know where they're spending it all. A lot of it on military adventurism and stuff like that. They're looting us for our money. They're taking it at the barrel of a gun. It's not that they're saying, hey, guys, we have this great cause. We're going to, we have this organization. It's this great, efficient organization called FEMA, and it's going, it takes care of so many people in disaster. Whenever a hurricane comes up, we take care of all these people. Can you please donate to our FEMA fund so that we can help everybody in Houston. That's not what happens. They put a gun up to your head and they say, hey, give us your money. We put it in FEMA. And, oh, by the way, only 1% is going to go to FEMA, and the other, a huge chunk of the other percentage is going to go to this endless war over in Afghanistan that is literally unwinnable. So we're getting looted at gunpoint by the government to the tune of like trillions and trillions of dollars every year. And we really have no say on what it's spent on or whatever, other than that, you're every 4 years you get a vote on your new, the new guy that'd be the kind of figurehead of the machine or whatever. But other than that, you really have no say on it. And at the same time, it's like, it's a huge news story that these guys are out there looting in Miami at some like store, breaking windows and taking whatever. It's like, oh, I can't believe these people are looting. And then in Houston, like some douchebag showed up with guns to go shoot at looters. It's like, why aren't you guys at the Federal Reserve? Why aren't you guys over at the police station? Why aren't you guys in Washington, D.C.? Those are the looters that we need to be talking about, worried about. Trillions of dollars. Not, oh, someone stole a TV from a Walmart. Oh, my God. Big deal. Big fucking deal. I can give two fucks about a fucking TV or a pair of shoes or, even worse, the people that are out there taking food to survive and people are criticizing them. Who cares? Those are pennies. Those are dollars. Like, we're talking trillions with a gun to your head, trillions of dollars taken out of your hard-earned productivity. You got no say on where it's spent. In fact, they use it to go kill people with it. And we're supposed to just be okay with that. and Trump cut a deal with the Democrats, supposedly behind the back of the Republicans, which honestly was probably just optics, where it's like, oh, we can't believe Trump repealed the debt ceiling with the Democrats, and I can believe it. These guys, regardless of party, regardless of supposed ideology, they're all looters. They're all statists. They're all part of this big machine that's predicated on, at the very root of it, it's just imperialism. People can call it what they want, racism. You can call it, state capitalism. You can call it, you can call it what you want. But at the very end, it's kind of this statist imperialism going on, and we're all being looted to pay for it. And we're so distracted and we're so divided up on so many other things that we can't even address it. And you know what? I'm fine with football. I'm fine with cat pictures. I'm fine with distracting ourselves and just doing fun shit, recreational things, smoking weed and drinking beer, and I do all that stuff. All that stuff would be fine if we weren't being looted and using our looted money being used to kill people on the other side of the world. If it weren't for that, shit, I would be using the internet to make cat pictures too and to share pictures of my cat. I wish I had a cat, but I can't have one because I live in an apartment that doesn't allow cats. But if I had one, I'd be sharing the pictures of it if I weren't so concerned with all this other shit going on. So, at the end of the day, all these distractions and shit, those aren't the real problem. The problem is that we are being distracted by, from bigger things. It's not the distraction. Music for tuning in full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing, but call it a reality cause there's no illusion. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to